Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never thought a Saturday night at Claire and Mason's annual garden party would change everything. The air was thick with champagne fizz and chatter, fairy lights twinkling like little witnesses to everyone's secrets. I had always found these gatherings tiresome, a parade of polite smiles and veiled judgments. But that evening, something shifted. I'm Felix, 38, a man who's been married to Lila for 10 years. We were supposed to be the picture of stability, a power couple in our circles. Lila is stunning, intelligent, magnetic. People notice her the moment she walks into a room. I've always admired her confidence, even envied it sometimes. But lately, admiration turned into a quiet unease. She'd been colder at home, distracted, distant. The spark that had drawn me to her years ago felt like it had dimmed, reduced to a flicker I couldn't seem to reignite. That night, we arrived together, smiles in place, mingling with acquaintances, friends, and co-workers. But the moment we stepped into the garden, I noticed something off. Her sister, Isla, was already there. Isla, with her effortless charm and that mischievous grin, had always been the kind of person who commanded attention without trying. She moved through the crowd with ease, laughter trailing behind her like perfume. And when she spotted us, her eyes locked on me. I felt a strange mix of recognition and challenge. The first hour passed in a blur of polite conversation. Lila, as usual, drifted toward a group discussing interior design trends, completely absorbed. I followed her, trying to catch her eye, hoping for even a fleeting smile. But every attempt was met with a polite nod or an absent-minded glance. I felt my patience thinning, though I masked it with forced charm, exchanging pleasantries with guests. Then it happened. It started with a subtle jab, delivered so casually it almost seemed accidental. Lila leaned toward a mutual friend and whispered something that carried just enough volume for me to hear. Honestly, sometimes I wonder why I even bother. He's not the man I thought he was. I froze, not out of shock, but out of recognition. These were words I had felt in silences at home, mirrored in her actions and dismissive gestures. And then Isla, sensing the tension, stepped closer, her voice a melody of mischief and sharpness. "Well," she said, almost teasingly, "then divorce him. I'll take him. You've got lovers anyway." The words hit the air like a crack of lightning. For a heartbeat, the crowd seemed to disappear, leaving just the three of us in that suspended moment. My chest tightened, a mix of fury, disbelief, and something darker, satisfaction. Lila's face turned pale, a subtle flush of embarrassment creeping in. But Isla, she smirked, as if she had just revealed a secret she'd known all along. I did nothing immediately. I let the silence stretch, letting the words settle. Then, with a calmness I didn't quite recognize in myself, I reached into my coat pocket. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled out a small envelope. I held it up, letting the corner peek from my hand. Lila's eyes widened, a flicker of fear and understanding passing through them. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, smooth, a contrast to the chaos in my chest, "I'm already free." The gasp that escaped her lips was faint but unmistakable. Isla's eyes sparkled with triumph, her smile widening. And me? I smirked, because in that moment, I realized something I hadn't fully allowed myself to see. The freedom wasn't just in the papers I held. It was in the recognition that I had finally taken back control of my life. Over the next few minutes, the world continued its casual spin around us. Guests chatted, glasses clinked, music played softly from the corners. But in that bubble around me, everything had changed. Lila looked at me, trying to process, to conjure a response that would make the situation normal again. But there was nothing left to normalize. I could feel the shift in the air. Friends who had admired our couple status began to exchange glances, whispers curling like smoke. And somewhere deep inside, a satisfaction rooted itself, quiet but unshakable. I had waited too long for recognition, for affection, for Lila to see me as a partner instead of a placeholder. That evening, I didn't need her acknowledgement. I didn't need her excuses or apologies. Isla, for all her boldness, had simply voiced what had lingered in the room, unspoken, simmering. And instead of anger or shame, I felt clarity. Freedom, as it turned out, could arrive with the softest of smirks, the lightest unfolding of paper, and a simple truth. Sometimes, liberation doesn't come from fighting. It comes from finally accepting. The evening stretched on, but I was no longer a participant in the usual performance. I walked through the garden with my head held high, each step a quiet declaration of independence. The laughter around me blurred, the sparkling lights softened, and I felt, for the first time in years, that nothing could touch the center of calm I had finally reclaimed. And in that reclaiming, I realized, some parties aren't about celebration, they're about revelation. And some words, spoken in jest or spite, can carry the most profound truths. The remaining night passed in a haze of polite chatter and clinking glasses, but I was untouchable in my calm. Lila tried to approach later, a tentative step forward, as if testing the waters of a river she no longer controlled. "Felix, we should talk," she murmured, voice soft, almost pleading. I shook my head gently, offering a smile that was warm but final. "There's nothing left to talk about, Lila. I've already moved on." Her expression flickered. Anger, disbelief, hurt, intertwined like shadows at dusk. I didn't respond further. Instead, I let her words float in the garden air, unheard by me but heavy on her conscience. There's a strange power in silence. It has a weight that no argument can match. That night, I felt that weight balanced perfectly on my side. As I stepped away, Isla appeared beside me, her grin now softer, almost conspiratorial. "You handled that beautifully," she whispered. "Most men would have snapped or begged. You didn't." I looked at her, genuinely intrigued. "Why?" I asked. Her eyes sparkled with mischief and honesty. "Because you knew something they often forget. Freedom isn't about the fight. It's about taking control when everyone else assumes you won't." I chuckled softly, realizing how true that was. For years, I had let Lila's moods, her criticisms, her passive distance dictate the rhythm of our home, of my heart. I had been reactive, waiting for acknowledgement, for affection that never came. And now, with the simple act of showing her the papers, I had rewritten the script entirely. The music shifted subtly, a mellow tune drifting from the speakers tucked in the trees. I felt a lightness in my chest, a clarity I hadn't known in years. The party was still bustling, yet I moved through it untouched, like a man walking through fog and suddenly stepping into sunlight. Lila found a quiet spot near the fountain, speaking in low tones to a friend. Her shoulders were tense, hands fidgeting with the hem of her dress. I didn't need to witness her unraveling. I knew she was processing, grasping the reality that I had made a choice for myself, not for her. Isla leaned in, whispering one last thought before disappearing into the crowd. "You're going to do great things, Felix. You'll see. Some things end, but that's just the universe clearing space for better chapters." I held onto her words, letting them echo internally as I wandered through the garden. The night felt endless yet intimate, each small sound magnified. The rustling leaves, the laughter in the distance, the soft tapping of heels on stone. And with each step, I felt layers of weight peeling away, like old paint flaking off to reveal something solid beneath. Later, I found a quiet bench tucked behind a hedge. The moonlight fell in gentle beams, painting patterns on the cobblestones. I took out my phone, scrolling briefly through messages, invitations, trivial reminders of life before. None of it mattered anymore. The envelope in my coat pocket, the divorce papers, was more than legal documentation. It was a symbol, a declaration of autonomy and self-respect. I allowed myself a small, genuine smile. There was something intoxicating about reclaiming yourself in a space that had always been dictated by someone else. And it wasn't just freedom from Lila, it was freedom from expectation, from the silent erosion of self-worth, from the quiet compromises that had slowly chipped away at my identity. Hours passed, though time felt irrelevant. Eventually, I left the garden, stepping onto the cobbled path that led toward my car. The cool night air wrapped around me, crisp and invigorating, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the hedges. For the first time in years, I felt no need to look back, no urge to explain, justify, or defend. I simply moved forward, unburdened and steady. The drive home was quiet, but my mind wasn't empty. I reflected on the irony of the evening, how a single remark, meant perhaps to tease or provoke, had catalyzed a change I had long postponed. And in that reflection, I realized something crucial. Liberation often comes not from dramatic confrontations or epic gestures, but from quiet recognition, deliberate action, and the courage to embrace the life you deserve. By the time I arrived home, the city was almost asleep, streets empty save for the occasional taxi or late wanderer. I parked my car, stepping out to breathe in the cool air. A sense of calm settled over me, sharp yet soothing, like the first sip of water after a long, exhausting run. I placed the envelope carefully on my desk, a quiet monument to a chapter that had closed. And though I knew there would be discussions, calls, perhaps even awkward social encounters in the coming weeks, none of that mattered. I had chosen myself, and in doing so, I had discovered a strength that had been buried beneath years of compromise. Freedom, I realized, isn't loud. It doesn't always come with fireworks or dramatic speeches. Sometimes, it comes with a smirk, a simple declaration, and the quiet confidence of knowing that you are finally, truly untethered. As I sat back in my chair, listening to the faint hum of the city outside, I smiled again. Lila, Isla, the party, the whispers. They were all part of a story I had once been trapped in. But now that story belonged to me entirely. And for the first time in a decade, I felt whole.